Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Inside Scoop. I'm Paula Rizzo. You know, our home offices have been getting a little love this past year and a half or whatever it is, because we're all there all the time, hanging out in those offices. But is that office working to the best advantage for you, right? Is it actually making you more productive? It might not be, especially not if it's like your kitchen table or something. It might not be the exact perfect setup. But today we're going to talk to a holistic designer who's going to teach us all about what you need to know to make sure that this office is most efficient for you. And by office, we use that term, kind of flexible, because it really can be anywhere that you are. And we'll talk about Feng Shui, and we'll talk about some really great ways to improve your space so you're even more productive no matter where you are in the world. And I have a freebie for you. It's a list making starter kit that I created for you to be more productive and more efficient. If you go to paularizzo.com/lists, you can grab that. I'm also a LinkedIn Learning instructor, and I've put together a whole bunch of courses with LinkedIn Learning. It's been such a blast to do that. But one of the courses works out really, really well because it is all about how to organize your remote office for maximum productivity. Now, this course really does go through everything that you need to know to create a really great workable environment wherever you are in the world. If you go to paularizzo.com/LinkedIn, you'll find that. I don't talk about Feng Shui in that course, have to tell you, because I'm not an expert in it. That's why my next guest is coming on to chat with me about it. But I hope that you check out that course, because I know it'll be a nice supplement to our conversation today. And, ask them some questions as we're going through. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, absolutely leave them below. If you're watching the replay, feel free to do that too. We're going to come back and be able to answer your questions there. But tag friends, leave your comments below, and we'll be able to get to all of your, burning questions about how to set up your office for maximum productivity. So without further ado, I would love to bring on my fabulous, fabulous guest. Let me hit the right button to get you here. Where are we? Here we go. I'm the producer, I'm the editor, I'm the director, I'm all of the above. Welcome. It is so good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. This is S Lee Wright, who is a new friend of mine. She's a holistic designer. She's a New Yorker just like me, but she's living in Spain. But thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Paula, for inviting me to join you. I love actually talking to another person who is all about productivity.
Yes, exactly. So how does the design of the home office actually impact our productivity?
That's a great question and a really important one. And I'll kind of take a little bit of a step back and say that your home environment completely impacts every aspect of your life. Productivity is not just about work, though obviously that's the key. Work from home right now has become a hot topic because of what's happened in the last year. But I've been a work from home person for a very long time myself. So not only as a holistic designer, but as a person who runs her own company from her home office, I also have some insights on how it's really important to make sure that your whole home is actually set up for productivity, and some specific things about how you would find that little area in your home that is your workspace.
Okay, so let's talk about that. How is it possible to, not everybody has an office, right? Let's just say that. Not everybody has that dedicated space that is for work. So if you don't have a dedicated office, how do you find the spot that would be the best for you? What's your advice on that?
Yeah, it's a great question too. So have been working in a lot of tiny spaces, not only in Spain, but in New York. Remember those little spaces in New York?
Yes.
Not everybody has a dedicated space. So it's super important to find a space that you feel comfortable in. That's going to be the number key thing. We're a little bit hung up on like making all of our spaces pretty, but really it is about making it functional. And so the number one thing that I hear all the time, if you don't have space and you're having your home office in your kitchen, it's not the best from a feng shui perspective, because it makes you want to eat more.
That makes perfect sense. It really does.
So if you have to be in your kitchen, which a lot of people do, just make sure that you're not looking at the refrigerator, and try to put yourself in a place where you're actually looking at something like a window or nature. The key is to
Huh.
not be looking at something that's going to pull your attention away. And food has a magic way of ruining productivity. If you're near
Wow.
the kitchen, and this is a feng shui thing, you
Yeah.
say, walk into a space. If you see your kitchen when you first walk into your space, you will tend to have an eating issue. You will tend to eat a lot more. You'll snack a lot more. So you
That
really
is
want to avoid having that
fascinating.
visual, isn't it?
It is
I know so many people who
fascinating.
have to work from home, work in their kitchen. I'm just
Well,
like,
I
you're
wonder.
orientating differently.
I really wonder because, I mean, everybody has been talking about, the COVID-15 or whatever it is that they've gained during this whole thing. And I wonder, there needs to be a study done about how many people actually set up their offices in the kitchen, because that might be the culprit. I mean, so many other reasons, right? We have nothing else to do, so we're home all day when we were on lockdown. But I think maybe, that did have a big impact there.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Wow.
Absolutely. It is kind of
Wow.
fascinating, right? So what you're
Yeah.
looking at is going to be what's in your attention sphere the whole time. So you really want to make sure that the space, wherever the space is comfortable and functional. And if it can't be a dedicated workspace, which lots of people can, you need to
Yeah.
take the time to figure out how to organize it so you can set it up and close it down. Because
Yes.
here's another really interesting thing from a work from home person who's been doing it a long time, and I do this for my clients, is
Yeah.
that you need to set up and close down, because those boundaries can get so blurry, right?
Oh, for sure. Totally. And, in my apartment in New York City, I show this in the course that I mentioned before, my LinkedIn Learning course, but I have a little setup in a closet because that's what I have. That's the available space. And so the reason I did it though was because I wanted to close the door. I didn't have an office, but I wanted to be able to close it down for the day and not look at it, because otherwise you just keep working. You're just nonstop. There's never a close down thing there.
Absolutely. And that is exactly, it's funny because I would say you have a good feng shui sense,
Mm,
because it is, if it's in your way, you're never going to be able to close it off. You're never going to be able to turn that off and have a more productive part of the other part of your life.
yeah.
There are other things that you're supposed to be doing in your home, in your life, besides working, which is a really interesting topic about being productive,
Yeah.
right? We need to be
Mhm.
productive within a time frame. We need to have bookends, both in our space, physically in our space, and in our mental space, about
Yeah.
when you're starting something and when you're finishing something.
I mean, it's such a great, tool for productivity in general. Like, it really makes you focus to say, okay, let me think about the beginning. Let me think about the end. Where am I? What am I doing? People don't do that level of planning really, but they obviously should, because it is very helpful. So let's talk. We've already dipped into Feng Shui a little bit. But people might not know exactly what it is. Can you explain what we mean when we say feng shui? And then let's talk about some of the ways that some of the rules and things that you should be abiding by in your home office.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, as you said, I'm a holistic interior designer. So, I'm classically trained as an interior architect, but I recognized that there was something more subtle that was going on in space. And I ended up studying with a grandmaster in feng shui. And what it really is, in simplistic terms, because we don't have hours for me to explain this to you, it's about the mindful arrangement of your space to
Mm,
optimize safety, productivity, health. And it means actually having to take time to think about your space, because in feng shui, your space is a reflection of who you are. And that's kind of something sink in. If
yeah.
you see that your space is a reflection of who you are you really showing up the way you want to be showing up? Right? It's a really fascinating thing. And we're caught up in the world of pretty, which
Yes.
is not what feng shui is, not about pretty. If something is ugly, then it's obviously not working. But that's not the focus. The focus of feng shui is about function. It's
Mm,
about balance. It's about making sure that the spaces and the environments that are specific for what they're meant to do. Bedrooms are for sleeping. and a little bit of nookie nookie, right? Kitchens are for cooking and eating,
Yeah.
right? Home offices are for working and producing things.
Right.
Living rooms are for socializing and relaxing. These are what the spaces are specifically supposed to do. And even if you have a small space, because I've done a lot of small space design, you can do one room, can have 4 or 5 areas dedicated specifically to it if you think about what it is that you want to do in that area. So Feng Shui is about being mindful about the way your space functions first.
Well, that is important because, it's not really how people go into this usually, I would say. I think they're just like, oh, good, that's an open area. I'll just sit over there. That's good. Let's talk about a couple of the other rules. I love rules. The Feng Shui rules. You and I had talked about this when we first met and we started talking. And I said, oh, I had read that it's not good to have a window in front of you. And I literally tell everyone to put a window in front of them because I'm also a media trainer. So I help people to look and feel better on camera. And like, that's a great light source for your video calls because now everybody's on video. And I was like, oh my gosh, am I messing up everyone's Feng Shui? But you said no. And the reason is?
So yeah, it's also interesting because Feng Shui is an ancient practice. So there's a lot of rules that are being thrown out there that need to be taken in the context of where we are in the modern world. So I actually practice ETB, which is a tantric Feng Shui system that looks at the energy of the space. So why you should and can look at the outdoor space, which is super important today and didn't used to be something that people would normally say was a good thing,
Right.
is before in the past they would say it was a distraction. Well, we need a distraction today because we're all a little bit too workaholics, right?
Yeah.
So we need it. And our eyes need to be able to rest. And we don't, when we're this close, we're this focused, we need to be able to shift our energy. And obviously, it's great to have the natural light. But
Right.
because of technology and because of the way the world has really shifted, 15 years ago, I would advise my clients not to have that window. Now I'm all about it like you are. I want it. Where my home office is set up, I can look right out my terrace door.
It's so nice.
And that was specifically done in that way in my very small Spanish casa.
Yeah.
Where was I going to put my home office? I needed to have some natural light and I needed to have the ability to rest my poor eyes.
It's so true. It's so true. And, it is, I'm in Miami now and, I'm looking at palm trees. Like it's pretty beautiful. It's really nice. Not only is it functional because I want there to be good light on my face, but also, knowing myself, knowing my productivity style, which I talk a lot about in my books and my recent book, Blissful Living, being able to figure out what is it that you need to be most productive? Is it looking into nature or is it, some people need to be completely just in their zone and get their work done. Knowing that about yourself is really, really key. But what about, the computer is now in the way here, right? It's the thing that's between me and the window. So that's a good thing too. What about doors and where you situate yourself in the room, where the door is? How does that all work?
Absolutely. Great question. That's another big Feng Shui rule is putting yourself in a position that's called the commanding position. And it means that you do not want the door at your back.
Yeah.
Now, I recognize lots of people in their home offices looking out the window. You got your desk, it's all set up, and that door is directly behind you.
Yep. I have it right over there. Yep.
So I'm going to explain this in really simplistic terms. Even if we are totally cerebrally focused right now, our body, our nervous system is completely aware that there is a door behind us, right? We may not be conscious of it, but our body is conscious of it. So you don't want to actually have that door there because there's always going to be this slight fear or nervousness that's behind you. Something could come and get you. And we are really wired. Our wiring is very old fashioned. We're very still related to the caveman and the cavewoman. So a lot of that stuff is just built in and logic doesn't take it away. So it's there and you want to still have your office set up in the way that you need it to be set up without having that there. There is a way that you can solve that problem. And that is that you make a mirror or something that is near you, near your visual, next to your computer, on the wall behind your computer, that gives you an iridescence or a reflection that you would automatically be able to sense when someone was coming in. The second way of doing it is a bell on the door. So it's some way of being able to alert you to someone entering you. No one likes to be snuck up on. And that's what's going on. We know that when it happens, right? But from a Feng Shui perspective, if you're working and you're really detailed and someone walks up and taps you on the shoulder, it's not a great feeling. Your whole nervous system is jarred.
You're edgy.
That happens when you're aware of it. When you're not aware of it, it's still in that mode. So you always want your desk to be in a position, if the door can't be, has to be behind you. Put some kind of reflection in front of you so you can see it. And it doesn't count that your computer has a little bit of a reflection.
What about my window, though? What about my window? The window.
I don't think it would be a reflection of enough, and it would only be reflecting at certain times of the day. So you're going to want to have some kind of a mirror, some kind of something that's going to really be truly reflective. One of the tricks I have is a stainless steel magnetic board that people do to organize things. And you have that because the color, if you leave some of it bare, the color would change if someone was coming behind you.
Okay. That I love.
And I also really like the idea of having bells on the door because you can do it with a piece of red string, and then it's very much of an auspicious symbol of bringing in the intention for bringing in abundance and money. So
I like that. I like that. Although it makes me cringe if I'm on a video call and I'm like, there's a ringing happening behind me and what's going on, and get out of the office. I don't need you in here. That's another reason I think to avoid having that, that setup with the door behind you. If someone's going to walk into your shot, I mean, that's something now that we really do have to think about, even with now we have so many things to think about, the Feng Shui, the energy, all of this, and also how do I look on camera, and is this backdrop okay? So let's talk a little bit about that and some solutions and things that people can do to look and feel better on video, because this is a new part of our office.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you're looking at my backdrop, right? And my backdrop is a Moroccan hand-carved screen, because I don't want you being distracted by what's going on in my home behind me. So this, to me, is one of the nicest ways that I came up with it for a client years ago, because when I used to work in New York, I actually had my own office, and my apartment had an office in it. So in Spain, in my little casa here, this is a great trick because two things: the ritual of putting it up behind me cocoons me into my office space, gives me the safety, and gives a backdrop for whoever. This doesn't need to be, this is my individual style. You can do this with a whole sorts of different things from an aesthetic perspective. Super easy to do this, not super expensive, and can be done on any budget, which is also something I'm very realistic in regards to how people need to be able to set up their home offices, because not all of us, as you said, have a large space. But this gives you that ritual, that bookend I was talking about, where you set it up and you're like, okay, I'm going to work.
Yeah. This is my task right now. That's what I'm working on. I love that. That's great. That's really helpful. And you have a couple of other tips. I mean, you've given us tons and tons of tips, but you have 3 specific tips that we want to absolutely make sure that we get to. And then we're going to answer some questions that have come in. And if you're watching right now, leave us some questions below. We'll check those out and bring those up and answer some of those. But I want to look to our first thing that we did talk about a bit already is, putting your desk in the commanding position. Now, desk we use lightly. So, not everyone has a dedicated desk either. Are there rules around what you should or shouldn't be? I mean, are we using TV trays for our desk, or, what's okay, what's not?
So from a Feng Shui perspective, I'm going to say that, again, it goes right back down to the idea of function. I'm not keen on people using like a dining table as your permanent desk, but we are so flexible and so moving. What you really want to do is, we say your desk needs to be in the commanding position, but really think about it a little bit differently. You need to be in the commanding position. You
Got
need
it.
to be in the position where you are in control of your environment, that you can see your landscape. You can see who's coming towards you. You're safe. You can have your back into a corner. You can have your back up against a wall, and you can look at it. So if you're sitting at the dining table, situate yourself where you're actually having the broadest view.
Yeah.
Situate yourself at your sofa or on the chair next to your bed. Wherever your quote unquote desk at that moment is going to be, you want to put yourself into a position of optimum safety. Find that comfortable zone. Now,
Mm-hmm.
workspaces are changing a lot, not just in the home, because I also used
Sure.
to work in the commercial world, and we've created a whole bunch of different work environments. Not everybody likes to work at a desk all the time, right?
Sure.
Sometimes you need to be reading a document versus working on your computer. So it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of also a really nice idea from a work from home environment to possibly have more than one zone.
Interesting. I like that.
So
That's,
what, more than one zone, depending on what it is that the task you're trying to
oh,
do
I
at
love it.
that moment. And sometimes there's a better space with a chair near a window that's in a quieter zone where you can go and read that contract or that technical document that you really need to be thinking about and just taking notes on.
Sure.
That's a different environment in a different space, but still the commanding position is always going to be key, which is
Yeah.
put yourself in the optimum safe position where you can see where anybody is coming towards you.
Sure. And, it's interesting as people now start to do hybrid work, right? Some people are going to be back in the office and also in their home office. I also did a course on that on LinkedIn. If you go to paularizzo.com/LinkedIn, you can find that, but all about how to be more productive when you're in two places, right? But thinking through that, you can't always decide where your desk is or what your setup is going to be when you're in a traditional office, because it is what it is, right? They're like, this is your desk, enjoy it, goodbye, do your work. But to your point, are there tasks that you could do where you're leaving that desk and going somewhere else, right? Is there another area within your office that would be better suited for that kind of activity? That's really interesting. That's something that I think people should start thinking about, as we move towards the hybrid work model, and also the idea of the hot desk, or, hoteling, where people are just showing up and, not always in that same space. So that's interesting. What about your second thing we want to get to here is balancing your elements. What does that mean, and how do we do it?
Sounds so crazy and complicated, but it isn't. It isn't. Trust me. So Feng Shui is based on nature. It's about balance and harmony. And again, we're very cerebral. We're a little bit set aside from what's going on in the outside world, which we really need to help address. And that means often our spaces, our interior spaces, are out of balance, that they are a little bit overabundant in one of the five elements. So could you tell me what the five elements are? Do you know what the five
I don't know if I
elements?
know them all. So wood, water, earth, fire, air.
And metal.
Oh,
Yeah.
metal. Okay, almost. I almost got them all. All right.
Yes. So great. So those are our five elements, and they need to be in balance if we want, just like homeostasis in your body, there's an
Sure.
ebb and a flow of what's going on, and there's a little bit too much of this, and then the other ones need to balance it out. So from a feng shui perspective, it's just about looking at your overall environment and making sure that the elements are in balance. And I'm going to say the number one problem I see in most people's homes is we have too much of what we call the earth element. And earth is brown, it's
Yeah.
heaviness, it's wood. Now, it's interesting because you would think wood would be the wood element, but that's not the way it is in feng shui, because wood furniture is dead.
Oh, right.
So it's earth. Wood, in an elemental standpoint, is trees and life, right?
Got it.
Bringing up. So we have often an abundance of earth. And what does too much earth do? It weighs you down. It makes you stagnant. It makes you a little lethargic. It makes you not be able to move very fast. So the biggest mistake is that most people's homes have too much of the earth element. So you need to do something to spruce that up in order to be productive.
Ah,
Water is going to help mix that up right away because
okay.
the water element starts to make it move, right?
So literally like a little fountain or something, like a little, okay.
Absolutely. A little fountain would be great. I'm going to tell you, interestingly enough, I'm very practical about this. Bring water. I always have a huge thing of water next to my desk.
Oh, that's good.
I
I have, look, I'm doing it already. I didn't even know. It's
Exactly,
perfect.
exactly. And depending on how much your overabundance of earth is, maybe you're going to want to invest in it. I also have an aromatherapy diffuser. I
Yes.
use the old-fashioned one that has water because it has water and fire. So to
Uh-huh.
me, those are two balancing things that bring me into my space when I'm.
Yeah.
The second element that you could do that could really help productivity in your home
Yeah.
office is a plant. Some
Ah,
kinds
I
of
have several
nature.
plants. I just moved them in here. I have little ones. My cousin gave them to me for Christmas, and I just moved them in here because I just felt like they look nice in my background. But they're clearly doing other things too.
They are. And that's great. I mean, it is normal and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm an interior designer. This is like what I started my life being. But it's so funny because my tagline is it's not just a pretty space. Of
Hmm.
course, we want it to be a pretty space too,
Sure.
right? That's super important. But that's not really the fundamental thing. Something's beautiful. It makes you feel good. Plants
Right.
make you feel good because they remind you of nature. They're all about new beginnings, and it gives you a perspective that we often lose in our spaces that are a little bit antiseptic. And
Yeah.
so you want to try to avoid that. And that's a little bit of a problem with a kind of modernist design where we want everything to be hidden.
Stark.
That's not
Yeah.
very functional. So,
Yeah.
you know, so
Interesting.
on
All right.
balance your elements and thinking about your elements in regards to your space. And
Yeah.
like I said, the abundance of earth can sometimes be what's stopping you from moving forward and being productive in your day.
Oh, it's so interesting. I want everybody to kind of look at look at your setup and see, how do I feel in the space? It's something that you don't often do, but it's worth it, obviously, because it can be a quick fix. You can just, get your glass of water and then you'll be like, this is all, I'm all
And
set.
put your plant there. Yeah.
You're
And
good,
maybe you have a desk or you work on a desk that's not always made of wood. Maybe you do
Yeah.
think of having
Oh,
something.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So the third one, and we did touch on this a little bit too, but is the ritual for the boundary. So, having that backdrop behind you, as you said, knowing that that's your open and your close. I will add, I mean, this is not a Feng Shui thing, but I make a list. You know me, I'm a big list maker. So I make a list every night before I leave my desk. That is my close down ritual. That is how I end the day. And I'm like, I'm not working anymore. I'm done with this. That's it.
I think that's super great. And that's interesting because I would say from feng shui perspective, a lot of my clients do have a productivity problem. They have a problem with what
Mm.
we call with being able to complete tasks. And so there's a whole creativity gua of the 9 areas of feng shui. And that seems to be one in our modern world that is a lot of problems. So one of the tips of what I tell my people to do is to, on a post-it, write the 3 things you want to complete by the beginning of the day. And that's how you start your day. Set
Ah,
your intention and you put them on your desk in the middle of your desk on the right hand side because that is the completion bar. And you have those and
ah,
you're always looking at it all day, whether it's your dining room table, whether you're sitting on the sofa and it's just over there, whether it's on your computer, on your laptop, on your desk. Those 3
ah.
things, you think
Yes.
about those. That's all you need to focus on for the day because we also are a little bit addicted to busy. We're a little
Yes.
bit addicted to having to try to do unrealistic
Totally.
thing. So I
Mhm.
always no more than 3,
Yep.
and you do that, and those start your day.
Upper
And you
left-hand
have
corner,
rituals.
that's what you're
I
saying?
like my aromatherapy diffuser. I put up my thing. This is my day. I have my
I'm
water and my coffee
starting.
starting, and when it's done, the light goes off, I blow out the candle, I put away the screen, my day is closed. And
Yeah.
there's a whole thing on my website that's about how your clutter harms you. I'm
Yes.
sure Miss Productivity expert Paula, you are all about that, right? Just
Yes.
it can really drain you. It is emotionally and physically bad for
Oh,
you. So
I mean,
do
it does.
not
I mean,
go
there's been
near stuff.
tons of studies done about how, any kind of being near clutter, especially women, their cortisol levels go crazy. Like it's not a good thing. So if you go to changeyourspace.info, there's an article there that S Lee has written on that. I love that, we're talking about rituals and closing there's so much more to this. We could talk about it forever. I want to get to some of the questions that we have that came in. Because one of the things too that's interesting is, the different where things are located. That's a whole other thing. Like you just said, upper right means something, and upper left, and whatever. That's a whole other practice here. Lauren has a question about the fire elements. She wants to know what are those, because we kind of skipped them.
So the fire element is one of the five elements, and it is a representation of passion. It's a representation of reputation and fame and how you're showing up in the world. So if you want to bring more of those into your life, it
Mm-hmm.
is in your work environment. We would say that it's the piece of your desk that is further right in front of you, in the middle, on the furthest part of your desk. Does that make sense? So
Okay.
in Feng Shui, we actually talk about a map that's called the Bagua that's divided into 9 sections. So
Okay.
the fire element, you want to bring it in for reputation, bringing some passion and fame into your life. And how you would do that is with a candle.
Oh.
Candles and electricity. So I've
Mm.
added it because I have a ring light, so when my day starts to get dark, I
Yeah.
also do it with a candle, and it can also be done with the color red. So you can
Ah,
use it
I'm my
soft.
own fire element today. I'm all
You
good.
are, you are. Whereas I'm wearing pink, so I'm actually all about love today. It's in
Oh.
representation of somebody I love who passed away. So I wear colors that are specific to the elements as well, which is a really great thing to think about. If you want to bring
Ah.
in fire, wear red, right?
Wow.
But it is,
Great.
it is fire and water are the two elements that they're singular, right?
Mm.
The wood, we have more than one. The earth, we have more than one. So fire, uh, just make sure that you don't have too much of an abundance.
Of too much of anything, right? I mean, we talked about having too much of wood, too much of whatever, but you can't overdo it in any of the capacities there.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
you don't
So
want to. Okay,
I hope
and
I
our,
answered
our
that question.
exactly. Our Amy is going back into the office after 14 months of being at home, which sounds like that's going to happen with a lot of people. The office space has a window and a door that faces our shop. So, what do you recommend for the best energy for that?
So if I understand that correctly, the office space has a window and a door that faces you. So if you're looking at the window and you're looking at a door,
Ah, yes,
right?
that
So if
sounds
she's
right.
looking at both of them, I would say focus more on the window, because you're going to be actually with a window. What that does is it makes you dream. It makes you be inspired about where you could go, what you could do, and it gives you that long distance view. Doors, on the other hand, are opportunities, but they also can be an escape route. And so you would
Mm,
try to not actually be thinking too much about the door, because it's going to distract you to want to go away. So in a feng shui perspective, we also talk about how it's not a great idea to have a front door and a back door in alignment,
okay.
because the energy runs straight through. And you don't want to do that. When you're going into a space, you want to be able to go into the space and settle. So
Got
if you
it.
ever did have that environment, you're going to want to do something that would block the energy. And like a stream or a flow of energy, you want to do something to make the energy go around it. So don't make
Hmm.
it so easy to go out that door.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's very interesting. Really, really interesting. There's so many different, setups, obviously. And, sometimes you can't deal with it. Like it's not your thing. You're just like, hey, I work in this office and this is what it looks like. So there's that. But that's really helpful. And if anyone else has any other questions, make sure to leave them for us below. We'll be continuing to look at these even after the broadcast is over. And if you go to changeyourspace.info, you can check out some information all about S Lee Wright and what she thinks about clutter and how you can, really get rid of it and all that. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate all of your insights. Thank you.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. I really enjoy talking about all of this. The context is so fascinating and interesting, as you were saying, and everybody's space is unique, but the kind of foundational principles can be used in so many ways, and it is not as complicated as one would think. You can
Yes, it's
enhance
not.
and change just any environment, and not even necessarily with a lot of money. It's just about having those feng shui eyes.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you for being here. And thank you all for watching. This has been lots of fun as always. And I look forward to seeing you next week. And that's it. See you later. Bye.